Thank you for listening to the BJJ Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BJJ Podcast. This is episode 279. Excited to have Clark Gracie on the show this week. I'm excited to be here with my good buddies Byron and Gary. We missed Gary last week. He was having a walkabout in the outback trying to find himself. Gary, how'd that go?
Well, you know, I ran into a wildebeest, which normally isn't from Australia, but somehow it ended up in the outback. And I pulled guard, so it ended up okay. So I made it out, and I'm doing well.
Nice. Heel hooked them, I imagine.
No, they don't have heels. Guillotine.
He tried the hook on it.
Yeah, I slipped off. I tried twice. Sweat. We were a little bit later on in the rounds.
Nice. Well, welcome back, Gary. It's good to have you back on the show. And back to normal.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, missing a week. I felt lost. And, I noticed from reading a lot of the fan mail, it was the best episode ever, the most well-liked. I think that may tell you guys something.
Yeah, my mom sent in the fan mail this week and really praised how good of a job we did.
Well, so did my family, so they should tell you.
That goes either way, Gary, because either they want you hanging out with them more and not recording as much, or they rather not hear you on this. So there's two ways to look at that.
That's exactly what was going on. I had my in-laws in town, and so maybe they like me. But maybe next time they will make sure they find time to make sure I can record, to get rid of me for a couple hours.
Who doesn't like Gary?
Well, I do have a list, if you guys really want to see it. We'll put it on the Facebook page.
Remember to check it twice, Gary.
No, I'm excited today. Clark Gracie is on the show. Just an incredible artist, jiu-jitsu artist, and he's going to be here to share some knowledge with us all and help our games progress.
Absolutely. If you're fairly new in the jiu-jitsu journey, check out our audiobook, Your First Year of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's about 2.5 hours long, and I walk you through a lot of the common things that happen in your first year of training. And I definitely hit a lot of hurdles and had to overcome them. And I think it's always better to learn from other people's mistakes. There's two ways to learn. Learn from your mistakes or learn from other people's mistakes. And it's if you're able to observe or learn or read or listen and learn and adjust things that way, you'll have a smoother transition, into getting into the BJJ lifestyle than if you just have to figure out all this stuff for yourself. And that's really what the book is trying to do. Jiu-Jitsu is hard. It's going to be hard, but some of the things that are difficult about it can definitely be smoothed over and made a little easier if you have some help. And that's the goal with the book. It's $11.99. There'll be a link to it in the show notes. Check it out. If it can help you out, I would love that you would listen to it.
And I know Joe says this a lot of times. Even if you're not new, you can learn some stuff. But even better, you can get it from one of your teammates. Christmas is just around the corner. It's coming up here very, very shortly. Make great stocking stuffer. Share the joy of jiu-jitsu for somebody for this Christmas.
There you go.
Just like the jelly of the month club. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
I've looked at giving that as a gift, and it's terribly expensive.
The jelly of the month.
It'd be a funny gift that would kind of year-round remind them of this stupid joke you did, but Byron, it's fairly expensive.
Think outside of the box. Just go to the store, buy 12 things of Jell-O, or just one big one and a couple little cans yourself, and send them out yourself. That's pretty cheap.
Yeah, or you can get the free jelly at like a lot of the restaurants that are
IHOP.
Kind of the
Just like. Yeah, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. You were the employee of the month one night at IHOP.
Although I never actually worked there. That's one of my biggest accomplishments.
That's a very big accomplishment. I know you actually put it on your resume.
Well, don't really have a resume at the moment, Gary.
Don't worry. I'll make one for you, and we'll post it to the Facebook page.
I do want to talk a little bit about a life lesson here. We like to do this about every week. Share a story or an event that happened to us and bring it onto the mat and learn from that, or vice versa. and this is at my actual job. I'm a firefighter, and this was really one of the bigger mistakes I've ever been involved in, as far as unnecessarily increasing the danger on an alarm. And really, we just entered into an area where we didn't know what was going on. We got called for an ammonia leak, anhydrous ammonia, at a giant, basically they make hot dogs at this place. It's a big industrial place that just cranks out like different sausages and hot dogs. Not the best place in the world to go to. I've been on a couple of tours as a firefighter to kind of see how it works and safety purposes like that. And so we kind of prepared for this event. Could it happen? But you always hope it doesn't happen. We get there on scene, and sure enough, there's, our eyes are burning and all this sort of discomfort things are going on. And we get the building evacuated. It was the biggest thing. And we have our air packs on and this sort of thing. But eventually that gas will seep through our gear and it is attracted to areas that you're sweating. So your armpits and anywhere else that has a lot of sweat eventually starts to kind of burn. And me and a couple of the guys, so this was actually a pretty big event here in Wichita. And there was like millions of dollars of lost product and damages done. And it was a big alarm that we ended up having to deal with and try to mitigate. But we were sent in, me and a team of, about 6 other guys, were sent in to search the facility just to make sure that nobody is in there like passed out or anything like that. And this was probably an hour or so into the event. So we get all our gear back on and we head on in here, and we have what's called a gas meter. I think Joe's familiar with these. And it's going to tell us if certain gases are too strong or whatever, to kind of make that as simple as possible. So we're walking around here, and the gas meter's not really yelling at us too much. And we searched the whole building, and we couldn't find anybody, so we leave. And by then, we are like very uncomfortable, would be the way to put that, with this being kind of soaked in this anhydrous ammonia. And it kind of find out later on, and this was weeks later, because this type of event, we try to learn from these things. What happened, what went good, what went bad. And we figured out that the gas meter wasn't calibrated correctly. Huge mistake. And in fact, the concentration of anhydrous ammonia was above the explosive limits. And what that means, I'm trying to make this as simple of a story as possible, but I find it, I keep going down little rabbit holes. So if there's too much of a gas and not enough oxygen or air or whatever else you need, it won't actually burn or explode. It needs to be a right mix. If you look at like gas as it's coming out of your burner on your stove, it doesn't just burn all the way into the pipe and all through the whole thing. It needs to mix with air a little bit in order to burn. It needs to have the right mixture. And so if you look at the very base of the flame there, it's not actually burning until it comes out and mixes with a little bit of air. The mixture of anhydrous ammonia was too rich to actually explode. We should not have been in there. Like that's a pretty big mistake. And it wasn't anyone. I'm just a firefighter. I'm not even any kind of officer. Definitely not a chief. I'm not making decisions. But the tools we had weren't telling us that it was too rich. We were uncomfortable. Yes, we were using our air packs. We can't breathe it. We can't smell it. So that was all fine and good. But if enough air got mixed into this, not more ammonia, but air got mixed in this, we could have definitely just exploded, and the whole building would have been leveled. So, terribly dangerous situation. We should not have been in there. We probably were better off just cutting off the gas and letting it kind of get out. And I don't know how you would try to rescue someone from that, but at some point in time, making rescues is beyond what you could do, because it's deadly in the environment. Anyway, how to relate this to jiu-jitsu. And this is a longer story than I had hoped. Basically, by having one tool to calibrate what we were at and see what we're doing, we couldn't really tell what was happening. We only had 1 meter. And it's kind of like if you have one training partner, or it's the same thing if you have like 10 training partners, but they all roll the same way. It's hard to tell how you would match up with other things and other styles. So enjoy the diversity that's in your team and roll with different people other than just the same people every day or how often you train. And that really helps your game get calibrated and adjusted to different people's styles.
Well, you took a while to get there, Byron.
I know. I didn't know how to shorten that thing at all.
No, well, it's kind of a complex subject, but that's 100% correct. I really do like that. And so, yeah, you have to expose yourself to different training partners to kind of gauge how your training is coming. So certainly in your own gym, don't limit yourself to just your 2 or 3 favorite training partners. And man, if you have a small gym and it seems like you're always with the same training partners, man, go to the next town over and go to an open mat or something. And not just to see where I'm at, like, oh, I just want to look at the yardstick, but to expose holes in your game and show you what you need to work on. And so, yeah, it's extremely valuable, and you do need more than one piece of equipment to tell you how you're doing.
Yep, thanks, Joe. You summed it up better. Our quote of the week is from Paul Kinzia in his book, Master Jiu-Jitsu, Master Life. And I'll put a link to Paul Kinzia's interview and maybe the book in there. I don't know. I'll put links with the quote here. But this is a fun book. It really has been helpful to me, kind of relating jiu-jitsu to life and lessons I've learned. And so I've got lots of quotes in here. We're going to go through some of them as time goes here. But this is on, if you have the book, this is on page 9. Jiu-Jitsu is a filter of life itself. Jiu-Jitsu doesn't weed out people who are weak or lack coordination or talent. Jiu-Jitsu weeds out those who lack core principles of success. In Jiu-Jitsu, those that practice become stronger. So I think that's a great example. You look around a room, you think everybody looks, like these people are really good at Jiu-Jitsu. They're tough and they're just like got something in that I don't. Really, they just have the core principles that have allowed them to become that. And I really like that about Jiu-Jitsu. You have to kind of get your head in the game and work on getting better, but you don't have to show up with a lot of like attributes to do well in Jiu-Jitsu.
I love that quote, Byron. You're talking about, just you have to have the core principles, and you were talking about, everybody kind of looks the same. And I remember the first time I went to a jiu-jitsu class, this is way back in the day when tap out was a big deal, but, I'd see people in tap out beanies and I'd be like, oh man, these guys are tough. I'm going to get destroyed. And then I'd see a guy over in the corner reading a physics book before class, doing a little bit of homework.
I know the guy.
Look at that guy. Yeah. And I look at that, and that's exactly true. That's true. And I look at that guy, and I was like, oh man, there's one guy I can beat up. And here we are 16 years later. The people with the core principles are the ones still around, the ones surviving. Like you said, some of us may not have the most physical attributes, but we've got those core principles to succeed in life that you need to succeed in life, succeed at work, anything. Jiu-jitsu, life, work, all the principles are going to work for each one. But it's just crazy the amount of people that I saw with physical attributes that may not still be training. And I'm not saying it's because their attributes aren't there. Some people just quit for other reasons. But, some of these people that you did not think could be as good as they are just based off of physical attributes and stuff of that sort, they've been going at it. They've never quit. They've got that strong will, that, willingness to learn, openness to learn. And here they are many years later, very, very skilled. And it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yeah, I like that Paul actually uses somebody else's quote just before that, and it's Paulo Ribeiro. He says his quote is, "Jiu-Jitsu exists to make you quit." And I don't think what he means is that the whole purpose is to grind you down and make you quit, but it pushes you to that point, and then that's when you find out what it takes to not quit. It pushes you to the point where you've got to dig deeper and like Rocky said, it's getting back on the mat for one more round that helps you learn the most about yourself.
Was that Rocky from Rocky and Bullwinkle, or Sylvester Stallone?
I think the latter.
Okay.
Can't be real sure, but I'm going to go with Rocky Balboa.
But Joe, you're talking about that. It's there to make you quit, and I can think of many times, especially when I first started, I really thought about quitting. It was tough, and I think from not quitting, because I was absolutely atrocious when I started, but I did have that strong will, and I look back at that's one of my biggest accomplishments, that I did not quit. I've been through injuries, I've been through times just getting beat up, trying to find time to train. Your morale gets low when you feel like you're not progressing, and to keep going through that is that's a testament to your will to keep you going. And I look at it that if I can survive jiu-jitsu and been going this long, there's not much I can't do in life. And actually, there's nothing I can't do in life.
You could do but double backflip, Gary.
If I tried, I could probably get there. It seems impossible, but so did putting a triangle on a resisting opponent when I first started jiu-jitsu.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was wondering how you're going to handle that one, Gary.
Oh, I can handle it, Byron.
You could handle. You start with learning to jump a little higher because your vertical is a little bit shallow, to be honest, Gary. And then you would learn how to maybe do a single
my
flip.
My vertical is negative.
Many times you fall when you try to jump.
Yeah, but I would learn to figure stuff out. I would learn to, post off of other people. I'm going to use, I'm going to use their bodies to my advantage.
You kind of do that jiu-jitsu style there, Gary.
Yep, I cheat.
Oh, Gary, we missed your last episode. This is just what we need.
Yeah, you guys probably had a great episode. You're high-fiving when you're done. You're like, this is great. Had a smile on your face.
Yeah, Joe actually flew in Wichita to record it last week, and it was just like, yeah. He's like, well, if Gary's not going to be there, I better be there in person. And
we doubled up and did a Facebook Live, 1.7 million views.
Right across from each other. Yeah. I don't think you realize that, when we're in Wichita, Byron and I are not even together. We're probably, 16 miles apart.
Which isn't that far, but yeah, plenty far enough.
Yeah. I always want to be
this
at least 20 miles away from Byron. 16 is probably not close enough. Well,
good to keep your distance, Gary.
Thank you.
I suppose, and I don't blame you. But I had a great time interviewing Clark Gracie a couple weeks ago, and happy to share it with you guys this week. And let's roll the interview with Clark Gracie. He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
Once, he rolled with Ike Turner on the river, inspiring Tina to sing. He bought a gi online and paid for it entirely with pennies. Pennies that he won as prize money from the Abe Lincoln Invitational. He is the only person to win 2 matches in a row via wedgie.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJ Podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm happy and excited to bring Clark Gracie to the BjjBrick Podcast. Clark, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. We got a lot to talk about. Not a ton of time, so we'll get right to it. If somebody hasn't heard of you yet, just give us a quick introduction, a little bit about you, a little bit of your personal history.
Well, basically, I was born into this family of martial artists, the Gracie family that has been doing jiu-jitsu since the beginning of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, really. And so I was just kind of thrown into it. And my grandfather's Carlos Gracie. He's the one that learned from the Japanese that came to Brazil and originally started teaching in northern Brazil, Mitsui de Maeda. And he had 21 kids. The 11th child was Carle Gracie, who's my father. My father was the first one to come to the United States in 1972. And then there's my generation of a bunch of kids and cousins that are continuing the jiu-jitsu tradition in our family. And I'm here in San Diego, California, teaching and doing it with a lot of pride and love, and having a great time with it. So loving it with competition, to teaching, to sport, self-defense, and everything in between, lifestyle.
Amazing how quick you summed up such a rich history, and I appreciate that because we do have a short time today. But one thing that caught me there is you're teaching with pride and love, and no matter who you are, in the world, you may not be able to train with Clark, but if your instructor has that, that helps so much.
Yeah, it makes a big difference when someone really loves what they're doing and puts passion into what they're doing. Most people start jiu-jitsu because they have a reason to do it, whether it's fitness or self-defense or just a hobby. But and then you become an instructor maybe, and hopefully you become an instructor because of your love of teaching and sharing the knowledge and seeing your students really improve and get better and use the techniques that you show them. But most of us, we hope that we can have a business like that where we're not really feeling like we're working. We're just loving the side of it and where we're teaching. Of course, there is the business side of it as well, but that's why we need some help from time to time, right?
Yeah. You started training jiu-jitsu very young. When did you start competing, and what was that like?
I started really competing when I was 20, 21, so a little bit late, considering the kids are starting these days, like 4 or 5 years old. But unlike a lot of my cousins and family members, there's only a few of us that were born in the U.S. Most of my family's from Brazil. So, and in the U.S., there was not a lot of jiu-jitsu tournaments. Even in Brazil, there was not a lot of jiu-jitsu tournaments, especially for kids during my time when I was growing up in the early 90s. It wasn't until probably the late 90s when kids really started training, and now you see kids just really thriving. I'm really excited to see this next generation of athletes coming up that have been training since they were kids, and those who stick with it and love it. I mean, it's really amazing to see this next level. These teenagers that are moving like black belts, seamlessly transitioning from submission to submission. It's really exciting to see how it's developing.
Do you feel like the teaching methods have changed over the years as far as finding better or different ways to teach, even especially with kids, and communicate jiu-jitsu to them? Or is it just the kids get at such an early start and some of them just take to that naturally?
Yeah, it's definitely changed a lot. I mean, I've witnessed it mostly with the adult classes, but with the kids, I mean, like I said, I think kids jiu-jitsu in general is kind of new. I mean, it's really not too much more than maybe 10 years old. Realistically, the amount of masses of kids actually starting, kind of like how karate has been around the world, and taekwondo, kung fu, for decades. But those who are good at it are amazing, and I don't teach kids personally, but I have great instructors here at the academy, and I think as long as they're making it fun and keeping the kids' attention, and installing more than just athleticism, but those values of all martial arts, that of honor and discipline, and parents love to see that as well, of course. And it's part of it is coordination and games, but once you get to 9, 10, 11 years old, you start getting into the fine details, just like with adults. So it's really amazing to watch.
I think it's really great that so many kids are picking this up and really learning jiu-jitsu and getting some of the values off the mat as well. And it's great for kids and adults. What's it like? You compete. You're top level competitor. You're very fun to watch. Very aggressive style, and that's one thing. But you run a school. That seems like a totally different thing. And is it hard to do both?
It It is definitely hard to manage everything, and I got a lot of help from people on my team and management, people we have here helping out. But I'll tell you one thing that's really been helpful. I just started using in the past few months is the software that we use to just keep everything organized from classes and instructors to keeping the students' profiles organized and promotions. And once you get to a point where you get over 50 students in your school, I really think it's important to have like a software to keep you organized, to track promotions, to track attendance, to have your students checking in, to be able to share videos and write newsletters and doing things like this. And I personally travel a lot for my association, my team, doing seminars, and this software, I can rest assured that like whoever's teaching the class and whoever's sitting behind the desk taking care of business while I'm gone is using this software to stay organized and really keep everything going smoothly. So Kicksite is the name of the software, and it's been super helpful. So I would highly recommend it to anyone who has a school.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I was fortunate enough to meet the owner of Kicksite a little while ago, and he seems like a very nice guy, and he's really excited about helping martial arts businesses run efficiently and effectively, and really looking to branch into the jiu-jitsu world. And it just sounds like so many people open up a gym because they love jiu-jitsu, but I've heard a lot of times on the podcast, it's harder to run a school than you would imagine. It's not all fun and games. You don't just come in and train and roll all the time. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that needs to be done.
Yeah, you definitely need help. It's not just about jumping on the mat and playing around and doing it for fun as a hobby, because numbers and paperwork and these kind of things catch up with you, and just tracking your student base and making sure everybody stays happy. So staying organized is crucial, and the software helps a lot with that. And for me, at least, and getting to, having a big student base, you definitely need it. So it's been great, really.
So I don't run a gym, and so I haven't really seen really what this does. It sounds like to me, students come in and they kind of type in a number, they log in with their name or something, and that way it credits them for attendance, and it keeps track that who's showing up, on what time or who's training. And does it keep track of like billing cycles and that sort of thing as well?
Yes, it does. So we have the billing software that takes care of all that as well. I believe they partner with another software, another program, and it's working great. All the different options of memberships, and you can customize anything you want. But really makes it easy. So customer service is fantastic as well.
Yeah, that's good. And it sounds like you could send out like a quick newsletter to everybody and let them know, what's happening. A Christmas party is this day, or whatever the case may be.
Right. Yeah. Just staying in communication with students and instructors makes it super easy.
Clark, you're known for an aggressive style of jiu-jitsu. Why do you think that is? Why do you prefer that?
It's not something I really ever thought about, like, okay, how do I want to train? Or, I mean, it's just we all make jiu-jitsu what it is for us. We have fun. Hopefully we have fun with our jiu-jitsu. And for me, chasing the submission and being very fluid and with my jiu-jitsu is what makes me enjoy it the most. But I think, I grew up with my father, Clark Gracie, and my family just always saying, like, go for the submission. You need to get the submission and dominate position-wise and never let anybody pass your guard and, things like this, So, I mean, going for the submission is kind of like the end goal, and I'm not really satisfied with myself if I finish a match on points, or if I, lose on a submission, lose on an advantage or points, or, things like that. I really take it to the heart when it's, by submission, whether it's win or loss, that's when it makes the biggest effect on me. So, and I think that just makes things exciting. And, I think these days it's getting harder and harder to submit because, the guys, the level is getting better and better. But these days people are winning off such a small points, like advantage points, and it's, the world's tournaments, and, sometimes I think people are almost aiming to win through these advantage points. And, for me, it's great, but if you can win that way, but it's not really ideal,
Yeah.
It's not as satisfying, I think. So.
I couldn't imagine it being nearly as satisfying. I think a lot of people go out with the idea of, game plan. I'm going to take down, guard pass, side control, lock in a choke, or something like that. They have an idea. And then during the match, something happens, or they lose confidence maybe, or something, and they end up to where they're winning, and they just want to end that way. You know what I mean? They don't want to be aggressive or take a chance. What would you say if you're coaching a student out there and they're up by a few points, but they seem to have they just slowed everything down? Do you say anything to encourage them to keep pushing and advance their game?
Well, the sport has and hasn't made it that way at the same time. Like the sport gives you a time limit, so naturally, if you are slightly ahead on anything, points, advantages, whatever, you can win when the time runs out. So sometimes people just kind of hold on, and they're afraid to take risks. But at the same time, the sport will penalize you if you are stalling, if you're obviously not looking to make any improvements in your position or chasing that submission. So I think they do the best they can as far as with the points tournament game. But originally, Jiu-Jitsu was made not really thinking about time limits, not really thinking about the points or anything. It's just like win that match, win that fight, defend yourself, and end the fight victoriously, which means by submission, right? So I think as long as we keep that in our mind and tell our students to train that way, I think we're good. One thing that I've been recently trying to push to my students, and I think it's been helpful, is telling them I'm not concerned about them going out there and getting the win. I wouldn't mind if they lose either. I just care about their intensity, their aggressiveness, and their attitude on the mat when they're competing. I want to see them give everything they got, and if I see them holding back or not really showing everything that they got, not reaching their full potential in the match, or just training, fighting much differently than they would in the academy, then I would be disappointed. But and I think by telling them this, it makes them just like, okay, my professor, my team doesn't care about if I lose. It's not a big deal as long as I show all my heart, in that match. So I think I wish someone had told me that, because I would sometimes get anxiety if I was down by an advantage in a tournament, and I think that can sometimes even make you not perform as good as you would, as if you were in the academy and you're thinking it doesn't really matter if I got an advantage point taken on me. No one really cares that you're in the academy. But when you're competing, you're looking at the screen, you're thinking, oh my God, I'm losing, time's running out, anxiety starts to kick in, so I think if we can take that anxiety, that nervousness away from the student while they're competing by just telling them, hey, go out there, be aggressive, show all your attitude, give your attitude out there, and be intense, then it's almost like you can't lose. You step off the mat and you lost or you won, whatever happened, but you gave everything you got. So you're definitely going to improve from the experience one way or the other.
Yeah, that's a great way to prep somebody to go on the mats and perform well. It puts the focus on themselves. If I want to go out there, I want to do the best I can. I want to be aggressive. I want to play my game, and that's what coach expects me to try to do. If coach expects me to win, that's now I don't have full control over that. There's somebody on the other side of the mat has partial control over whether I win or not. And you know what? If it's their day, or maybe their game plan matches up poorly with mine. But I have control with how hard I fight. I have control with how much heart I'm going to give this, how much effort I'm going to give. Those things I can control. So that I think that does take away a lot of the nervousness and turn that into excitement.
Right. And, actually, I stole those 3 points, aggressiveness, intensity, and attitude. I stole that from my good friend Adam Redzovic, who just told me just a couple weeks ago while we were traveling together in Europe. And he, so I have to thank Adam Redzovic for that. He's got a great association in Chicago, really successful academies over there. And so I just wanted to thank Adam for that on air over here.
That's cool. Yeah. You do travel a lot. What are you doing? How often are you traveling? Where are you going?
I'm usually doing 2 or 3 big trips a year where I'll try to jump over the pond, whether it's the Atlantic or the Pacific, and I'll be either in Asia or in Europe, and I'll try to do a bunch of seminars all at once, and like I just got back yesterday from 7 different countries and all over Europe and Turkey as well. So just tried to hit all the affiliates and some other just friends that I have in the area. But a great trip, always loving to see the Jiu-Jitsu community come together, living the Jiu-Jitsu lifestyle, people we've never met, but we have so much in common, doing the same thing that we're doing just on the other side of the world. It's just beautiful to see. And, we have such a common lifestyle. So it's very nice to see like how Jiu-Jitsu has grown and continues to grow and affect people's lives in such a positive way around the globe. And, but I usually go to Europe and New Zealand once or twice a year as well. I'm planning a trip there right now in January to go to New Zealand and probably stop through Asia as well because I have some affiliates over there. And just keep giving those guys some positive reinforcements and checking in on everybody. So I like to stay well connected with the guys, with the teams.
That's great. So you have a school there in San Diego where you're at?
Yes.
And then
headquarters is here.
Headquarters is there. And so how many other places do you go to like on a regular basis?
Well, the affiliates for sure. I go at least once a year.
Okay.
And sometimes we'll also send one of the other instructors here from the academy or other instructors that are traveling. They may stop into other schools to do seminar to help out the academy. But I also have a lot of friends, over the years. Like I just mentioned, this guy Adam Redzovic in Chicago. I'm there at least once or twice a year, visiting, doing seminars, and just hanging out. And learning as well. When I travel, I go to these other schools. I'm seeing what they're doing in their training, into their technique, and how they're managing their schools, and I'm just absorbing it all. I try to take it all the good stuff, and bring it back home so I can use that here at my school.
That's great it's like you go out and you deliver jiu-jitsu, and then you also, when you come back home, you bring something new with you.
That's right. Yeah, like always learning. So never too late to learn something new, right?
Yeah. Do you have a favorite submission or a couple submissions?
Yeah, everybody usually knows me from my omoplata, and it's one of my favorites. It's something that I feel like I do so well that I almost feel like I'm cheating when I'm doing it. Like it's not fair because it's just I find it really easy to get into, and once I get into it, I'm pretty much 95% sure that I'm going to finish it. So, but there's a lot of other things I like to do as well. I definitely don't want to be remembered or thought of as someone who only has that one trick. I feel that I'm fairly well-rounded. I like to be in all different positions and challenge myself to finish different ways. I have everything from like the very simple jiu-jitsu where it's just like smash, pass, and mount, and just like very traditional Gracie jiu-jitsu, like cross choke, like Clark Gracie did in I think it was 2008 and 2010, where he just submitted everybody from the mount and the cross choke. And then I have like kind of a more dynamic, sporty side as well, where it's kind of people look at me as like, oh, it's more of a tricky guard, but I still think my jiu-jitsu is fairly simple, but there's so much details that probably it can get a bit complex. But it's a beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu. We're all artists. We go out there, we become these this artist to make this something beautiful out there, hopefully, which is the demonstration, the display of our technique and how we use it. So it's just excuse me, it's just a great thing to test ourselves when we go and compete and let people see our styles, and I love it. So yeah. I'm very, very fortunate to be doing something that I love to do.
Clark, you and I both are Omoplata fans.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
I think it's like one of the things that people just ignore a lot. And like that's one of the first submissions I started showing my wife, because there's so many advantages to Omoplata. Like it gets you off to the side of the person. It takes a lot of their strength out of the game. Like compared to like a triangle choke where you get smashed sometimes, you don't really get smashed as they escape Omoplata. Like I'm just a big fan of it. When people consider Omoplata and they say, oh, it's more of a sweep, what are they doing wrong?
People don't know how to control posture. That's something that I teach a lot when I'm teaching the Omoplata, is just bringing attention to using your legs in the right way, using the correct muscles to control posture, having hip mobility, moving your hips, like hip escaping in the right direction, while depending on the person's reaction. As a person's trying to escape, using that against them to advance into a deeper, closer to getting the tap position with every movement that they make. And you're many steps ahead once you get into the position. So, it's, once you kind of map out where your opponent can go, you can anticipate their move. You can prepare yourself for the next position as it's coming. And like you said, you're putting yourself off to the side. You're not getting smashed. And really, you can kind of pause the fight there for a moment if you like to, take a little breather.
And smile for the camera.
Yeah, and it's really, it's a tough position to just shake off, right? So it's a great move. Definitely underestimated, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. Do you do a lot differently without the gi on for Omoplata?
A few of the grips are different. It can get a little slippery, more slippery, but and then some of the grips definitely are just a bit different. Just to be able to hook yourself on a little bit easier, make sure you don't slip away from it. Definitely slightly more difficult, but still definitely obtainable. I've got quite a few submissions no gi with Omoplata still, but gi is definitely a little bit stronger for that.
Yeah. I know we're running a little short on time here. I definitely want to ask you this. I got a lot of listeners out there are white belts and blue belts. What do you look for in a student when you're giving them that blue belt? What's one of the bigger factors that come into play?
Yeah, I'm like my dad. He would always say blue belt means you've mastered the basics. You have a good idea of all the basics, and I would we have a curriculum that we use here in the academy, and I hold them to it. If I say you gotta be aware, you go to another school and you're wearing that blue belt, then you're not going to be unfamiliar with most of these techniques, some of these positions. There's a big evolution of jiu-jitsu, but as far as the basics go, and self-defense, I think we hold people to a pretty good standard here, and we have a good schedule of classes program where they're set up for success to get through it in the best way possible, where they're retaining the information and seeing it over and over again throughout the week. And as long as they show up for class, they're gonna get it. And if they're enjoying themselves, they're gonna hold on to that information, and they're gonna thrive.
Yeah. It's so much easier to learn something if you also enjoy it. That's totally true, and I think we all feel that as we enjoy jiu-jitsu so much. We mentioned a mutual friend of ours, Jason Neff at Kicksite, and I'll put a link to the show notes. Do you have a gi sponsor or a favorite type of gi?
Right now, I'm using Maeda brand for all my gis. And not only just for myself, but I'm designing gis for my academy, for my students with Maeda. And they have a really fantastic product. I think they might have the record for one of their gis was the highest selling gi in history, the most gis sold in history. I think there was a red label, lightweight gi. But they have a nice variety of uniforms and no gi stuff as well. It's like the top of the line stuff I've ever seen. So I'd highly recommend it. And they're really, really growing fast, this company. So, and they're based here in San Diego, which I love that it's easy for me to just go over to their main store called Fighters Market to go pick up some. So yeah, it's been great.
That's cool. And they've got some really cool designs inside the gi, which is, I always appreciate that because you don't notice it right away, but as you're rolling and training, the other person, oh, that's kind of cool. Kind of a hidden detail. It's spelled Maeda. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Clark, if somebody wants to come train with you or learn from you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
You can go to my website at clarkgracie.com. I know Instagram is getting much more used than it was before and kind of taking over. So my name, Clark Gracie, or Clark Gracie HQ is the academy. But and then there's also Facebook. So I'm pretty easy to find if people want to find me. And we're always here, pretty much open all day, every day. So we're open to everyone, visitors, and just enjoying jiu-jitsu over here. So
awesome.
Hopefully you can come by sometime and show me some of your omoplata tricks as well.
I don't have any tricks for you, but I would love to learn some. And it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for the interview.
I want to thank Clark Gracie for the interview. I want to thank our friends at Kicksite for helping connect us. I was talking with them, and they mentioned that they happen to work with Clark Gracie, and would you guys like an interview with him? I said, absolutely. That's not even really a question. That's how can we make this happen type of a thing. And so they helped us out. If you own a jiu-jitsu gym or manage one, Kicksite would definitely be a big help with getting things organized. And really, most people who run jiu-jitsu gyms love jiu-jitsu, but don't really enjoy the business aspect of running a gym. And that's where Kicksite comes in. Just kicksite.net is their website. And check it out if you're interested in that. And I want to thank them for helping us get this interview with Clark. And briefly, talked about the picture of Clark Gracie that is probably the most famous jiu-jitsu picture out there. He's grappling Ken Permola. He applied omoplata. Ken stood up, and Clark is kind of hanging there in midair. Cool, calm look on his face, and his hair is all. Gary describes his hair as magical, and just a kind of a interesting picture. And I think it's kind of like if you know more about something, you could enjoy it more. Like you could look at a flower, like, oh, that's pretty. But if you know that that flower is actually 7 years old, it blooms only once, and it's got this type of a thing going on, and the seed is planted by a weird ant or something, like, to me that makes it a more enjoyable experience to look at that flower. Same thing with the omoplata. If you understand jiu-jitsu, that picture has so much more value in it because you know what's happening. If you don't understand jiu-jitsu, the flower is still good, the picture is still really cool, but having that knowledge lets you appreciate it even more.
Man, Byron, I am so glad that when you were in college, you studied botanomy.
Botanomy, Gary.
It's kind of like polygamy, but it's botanomy. Byron, you're a botanist.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
How's that piano playing going, Gary?
The crazy thing is I was actually playing the board game Apples to Apples the other day, and pianist was one of the words. So I just threw it out there for an answer just to see how somebody would say it.
Did it get a big response or a little response?
It got a little response. But
That's what yours always gets.
Yeah, I turned it into a big response, though.
Oh,
I'm that kind of guy.
Way to work with what you got, Gary.
Yep, you got that right.
Joe, what do we have this week for the article?
We have Strong as a Mother. Why it's so important for mothers to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's by Jill Gill. I don't know if I'd like a name that rhymes like that. Jill Gill. And it's on Jiu-Jitsu Times. So interesting article. She is, in fact, a mother. She trains Jiu-Jitsu and believes it's important. And I believe it's important as well. But part of the reason I like the article is, as usual, some of these things apply to everybody. But yeah, one of the things she points out that I know from having watched my wife raise our 4 kids is that as a mother, you can sort of lose yourself in motherhood. And it's important for moms to have something that's kind of just for them, things they can get away from, actually talk to grown-ups that speak other than toddler gibberish. So that was one of her points that I really liked. Yeah,
and Jiu-Jitsu, further on in the article, teaches a lot of different lessons in life, and one of them that maybe they don't get in school, but not everybody wins. You don't always get a medal. You don't always get the victory, and that's okay. You have to learn how to deal with that, and I think that Jiu-Jitsu still has that most of the time, and I think that's important, and that's an important lesson for kids to learn with Jiu-Jitsu. And it's even better if you're experiencing Jiu-Jitsu with the kids, maybe not at the same time, but I really like the parents that also train. And sometimes it goes one way, that the parent came in, the mom or the dad came in and like, man, this is great, let's get the kids on the mat. Sometimes the parents come in, they say, oh, this is the kids thing, and then they see the adults go and like, maybe I should try this. But to experience this together, you don't always get a medal. You might see mom or dad get a medal, or you might see them not get a medal, or you might not see them, maybe they thought they were going to get a new belt and they didn't. It's all okay. It's just like life. We have to work with the things that are here, and if 10 people sign up for a tournament, statistically, you have a 1 in 10 chance of winning, and I guess a 3 in 10 of getting a medal. But some people have to not get those medals, and you could train really hard and you could do your absolute best and come away with a first round loss. And how you deal with that in front of the kids, or how you encourage the kids to deal with that, can be very important. And I think that those are good lessons to learn. The kid later on goes to apply for a job, they don't get it. How do they deal with that failure? Some kid actually gets a job they like and they lose it. How do you deal with that? These are some early little lessons that could be learned by these children that they could use and build that resiliency.
Man, I've never heard anybody put it that succinctly before, Byron. That's the best sales pitch I've heard for why parents should train jiu-jitsu with their kids.
Joe, now you're just being too nice to me and
Nope,
making Gary jealous, which is very nice.
I think we got a bromance going on here.
Well, Gary, we know that you are the Michael Jordan of the City League basketball there in Wichita, and all your kids ever see you do is win, win, win. But some of us teach our kids how to be good losers as well.
Joe, you haven't seen me play basketball. Or a roll, as a matter of fact. But what I really like about this is, she's a mom. She's trying to find time in her busy schedule to train. She goes to train, and then she gets mom guilt, what she talks about, where you feel bad for taking some time to yourself, but it's something that's needed. Like Byron was saying, all the lessons that you learn when you take your kids to jiu-jitsu when you're training too. Like, how cool is it to say, man, that's my mom over there training. You're going to be looking up to your mom even more than you already do right then. Plus, by mom training, plus by mom bringing her kids to train, we're growing the sport. We've got, we need those young people to train, to keep this sport growing. And by mom, stepping out on the mat, there's a better chance our kids are going to stay training. I think that's great. And one thing I like that she talks about, towards the end there is next time you're training and there's a kid screaming at their mom on the mat, instead of cutting eyes at the mom, give her some grace. Recognize that mom for what she is. She's a warrior and a nurturer. I thought that just sums it up perfectly. But, support. That's key. We need moms, dads. I'm not just saying there's moms, dads too, but we'll just go back to moms. Need the support of everybody in the school, and that goes from the brand new white belt to the people who've been training for 10 years to the owners of the school. You have to make it easy to grow your school, to for the mom to bring the kids in and stuff of that sort. And I remember when my kids were young, and I would bring them, and I had supportive people. If my kid started crying and I had to jump off the mat to take care of my kid. This was before they were training age or anything, but it makes it a lot easier for me to train, and I know for Miss Gill to train when she's got that support from everybody. But I just really love this article, but I just love that picture right at the front with Jill sitting there and her kid right there on her lap, and that's to me that sums everything up. That picture's awesome.
Yep. Gary, I like that the way she ended the article too, but every time I read statements like that, I kind of reflect on how fortunate I am that, man, I feel like every gym I've been a part of has been really accepting and supportive of everybody. Went to class Thursday night, and it's a smaller class, maybe 5 or 6 of us, and Matthew had his kid there who's 12, and so he does roll a little bit in the adult classes, and then another guy had his 5 and 7-year-old there, and I think pretty much everybody in class took a turn rolling with the kids, so the dads were both able to come and train and not be preoccupied with what their kids were doing. And some of us, I got to work on my multiple attacker defense there. My last role was against a 5 and 7-year-old, and so it was kind of a win-win situation. And I feel fortunate to be a part of gyms that are, welcoming of that type of thing.
That's the key right there, Joe. Welcoming gyms, and just like what you said, you're fortunate to be part of them. And I think most gyms are like that, but we've seen questions before of people who aren't at gyms like that, and it's up to us as training partners to support your training partners, do everything possible to help them. And I can think of, I forgot the name you said, Joe, there, but he brought his 5 and his 7-year-old. And like you said, that made it so much easier for that dad to, give it his all and keep his focus on learning for that day and not worrying about if his kids are okay. And it just brings the whole school together, your whole team that much closer. The dad's like, man, I've got some great guys. These kids can't wait to go to class next time because they got to roll with Joe. They're like, man, that Joe guy's awesome, and I really loved rolling with him. He takes me to the side and plays with me. And, the kids are saying, hey, can I go back to jiu-jitsu? Making it so much easier for dad to get to jiu-jitsu and learn. And those kids are going to see it just like what Miss Gill talks about. Her kids are going to see that, and they're going to want to train. And then we're just going to build jiu-jitsu up. It takes a village to keep this rolling.
Training at Fox Fitness, there's almost always children on the side of the mats, like they have little bleachers there where they kind of play where we're having class, and they've never bothered me. But thinking about it from this perspective, like, man, how awesome is it that these kids are kind of growing up around this? And I hear stories from my dad. His dad owned a gas station, and it basically was like guys come in. They drink, they smoke, and they talk about, they just kind of like a guys club. My dad was so ornery at his house. His mom would say, go with your dad to the gas station and hang out with those guys and keep him out of her hair for a while. And so he grew up in a gas station with these rowdy guys that would just kind of socialize together. And I don't know if you can say it affected him, but it's just kind of where he thinks of, like, part of his upbringing was around that. And part of these kids' upbringing is around a jiu-jitsu gym. And so, sure, some of these kids are already training and love it and will just kind of sail through that into adulthood and, even longer into, like, late adulthood. Some of these kids won't like jiu-jitsu at all, and there's nothing you could do about it. But some of them will try it, And then, of course, like, puberty hits, they have other interests, believe it or not. And maybe later on in life, they come back to it and they get those memories of what it was like to be on the mat and have mom or dad out there and what was going on. And they kind of reconnect with a part of their past. Like my dad, he doesn't smoke at all. He doesn't drink either. But when he's around people who are, it reminds him of hanging out with those group of guys, and he doesn't dislike it. Most people who don't smoke don't want to be around people who smoke, but my dad really doesn't mind it that much because it kind of brings him memories of his childhood, which is kind of a weird thing. But maybe these kids, a lot of them I think will train, and a lot of them will find jiu-jitsu again and have like nostalgic memories of being a kid at the mats and just kind of being there and part of their lives growing up around jiu-jitsu.
Byron, after hearing that story, it all makes sense because I remember you were telling me your dad was a superhero, and your mom would always have you hang out with your dad at work, so you basically became a superhero at a young age, and you never did hit puberty, so you never went to other, things to do, other activities. You stayed being a superhero. So now I understand why you're like that. So it definitely makes sense.
I'm still hoping to get my man strength.
And Byron still runs around the house in his tidy whities with the towel strapped around his neck like a cape and off having a good time being a superhero.
When I do that, I cannot find my wife. She just disappears. But good article. It's jiu-jitsutimes.com. I'll put a link to it in the show notes, and thank you, Jill, for giving us writing this article that we could talk about. And it's great to have another perspective. That's kind of the big thing with the article. We can't just be three guys talking about jiu-jitsu because we need more perspectives on jiu-jitsu, and we can never write an article like this because we don't have that lens to look at it through. So thanks for sharing, Jill. Guys, I want to thank our Patreon supporters and give a special thank you to our newest Patreon supporter, Sarah, for supporting the podcast. Sarah also jumped in and has joined the private Facebook group. That's part of the whole Patreon thing if you are on Facebook. So what Patreon is, if you're like Sarah and maybe you're thinking, hey, I'd like to support this podcast and help them grow it and make it even better, you go to Patreon and you'll find us there, or find the link in the show notes. It's probably easier. But you kick in like $1 per episode. That really helps out. That you wouldn't believe how much each additional person that we get on Patreon helps us to make this show bigger and better. But so do that, and I'll mail you out a 5-inch BjjBrick gi patch, and also send you a sticker. And then you can join Sarah and many other Patreon supporters in the private Facebook group where we'll ask questions and say, hey, would you like to ask Clark Gracie this question? Or I guess I would say, what question would you like us to ask him? And kind of get some input behind the scenes in the show. And we'll ask questions to you guys, like, what do you guys think about this topic, or that sort of thing. And so it's just kind of a way to get more interaction with the show. And the way you do that is join the private Facebook group. And the way you do that is if there was on Patreon, and then send us an email. I make this sound more complicated than it should be. I think I've taken some sort of a concoction of food that makes me explain things in the most complicated way possible with my off-the-mat lesson that was like 30 minutes long.
Or maybe it's because you're a superhero, Byron.
I don't know what that would be super of. Yeah. I'm really good at eating ice cream. Can that be a power?
No,
okay,
not at all.
But send us a message on Facebook saying, hey, I'd like to join the private Facebook group, and we'll get you hooked up there. Because, Sarah, we love that you're added to the group, but I can't find Sarah just on Facebook randomly. So help us find you and send us an email at bjjbrick@gmail.com or message us on our Facebook fan page. Everyone is welcome to join the Facebook fan page. That's always a lot of fun, too.
Byron, it is really kind of sad that I think about it, that a superhero such as yourself has trouble finding people, because normally a superhero can find anybody, especially somebody in need of help. So, I just thought that was kind of weird, but it kind of gets me back to your audio book that you're making.
Oh, the one that I'm actually making. Or are you going to make one up for me, Gary?
No, the one you're actually making right now. That how my life as a superhero has helped me in jiu-jitsu, and vice versa, how my jiu-jitsu has helped my life as a superhero. I thought that was pretty cool, and I bet a lot of people didn't know you were a superhero, but I'm really excited for this audiobook.
Yeah, and I'll Joe has already heard the book. What was your favorite superpower that I have, Joe?
Well, you are, I hate to give away the secret, but you are bouncing boy. And so your ability to fall out of a first-story window and bounce up to like the fifth-story window to save a cat in a burning building, I think that's what I'm most impressed with.
Yeah, what a strange way I figured this out. It happened on the mats. I went to pull guard, and I bounced back up and ended up getting a flying armbar. And most people start a flying armbar with like a collar grip and maybe a grip on the arm. My best way to get a flying armbar is to pull guard, bounce off my butt about 6 feet off the ground, and lock in that armbar. The only problem is if I happen to bounce hard again, we end up off the mats usually. It's something I had to work with. And so far, my petitions have gotten me nowhere, but I cannot wear a cape in any organized competition event. So the best thing I could do is untuck my gi from my belt and kind of let it flap behind me. But even then, my arm is still in it, so it's not really a cape.
Do you have any trouble entering competitions with different colored capes, aka gis? Have you had trouble with that?
No. The typical bouncing boy is kind of looks like a ball. And so I've been gaining weight, and I just wear like a blue gi with some little white stripes around the arms.
Well, I know you were talking to Joe and I as you were editing this book and ask us, some of the questions. But, explain about your biggest superhero talent, your talent, your sense of smell. Explain how you use that to help you either in crime fighting, firefighting, locating people, or jiu-jitsu.
Well, firefighting, the sense of smell is always handy. If you're looking for like somebody who's burning stuff and they should be burning stuff, roll down the windows, get the nose out there, start smelling it in and say, okay, we're close. Okay, we've passed it. Okay, which direction's the wind? The nose helps out a lot. In jiu-jitsu, the sense of smell, you wouldn't think it has anything to do with jiu-jitsu, but that's where you're wrong. Because I smell it a lot when I roll with you, Gary. I've smelled it a couple times with Joe. Fear. I could smell your fear, and then I know when to attack. If I kind of act like I'm looking at a Kimura, no, I don't pick up any fear smell. I kind of let it go. I act like I'm looking on the leg. Okay, there's some fear. His leg attacks, defense are not that great, all over that leg, and that just kind of helps me pick out where I need to go. Is looking for that fear. I guess smelling for that fear.
Yeah. That is impressive.
Yeah, and
what does fear smell like, Byron?
Kind of like a mix between urine and disappointment.
and the thing is, like we were talking about, superhero, your strength grow as you get older, and so really what happened was when Byron was younger, and it still happens to this day, he was used to wetting his bed all the time, and he got used to smelling urine. And since he does it every single day when he's sleeping, he gets used to it, and it's so much better. But it's just great how you evolved, and you've kept evolving, even though you've never, reached puberty. That's the impressive part.
Yeah, that's been a struggle as well. But you couldn't become bouncing boy, which Joe sent a picture as we're talking here on Skype. He's able to pull stuff up, and evidently there's a superhero named Bouncing Boy or something. There's the big kind of circular boy that bounces, and that's who I'm being, with the big nose and sense of smell.
Well, the last question I'd like to ask is, a lot of your detractors always said that the only reason you bounced is to hope that you would reach puberty, that they would drop, and yes. That's what you were doing. Is that true? Or is that how you found out about your bouncing superpowers?
Well, sometimes a baby boy doesn't actually hasn't descended all the way. Things haven't kind of bounced into place. You know what I'm saying, guys? Like, sometimes not all the whole toolbox is present until they.
It could be a tool bag
or a sack. So just the initial bouncing, a lot of times I was trying to get some things to just jar loose and come out from their internal cavity. This is awkward. So every bounce, I kind of have a little hope that my balls will descend. Just take out any of what I was implying.
My balls will descend. But yeah, we're really looking forward to that audio book, and it's something you definitely want to pick up, and it'll be at all the popular stores like Spencer's.
Yep, and I really look forward to the parts that you guys play in it with, trying to help me find who I'm going to become as I approach the possibility of adolescence.
And the one thing that Joe and I were talking about, that this may actually help us become better grapplers, because we're going to learn how to mask the scent of fear.
Well, I know what that smells like, though, too, Gary.
Yeah. Well,
it's your foot powder.
Maybe we can. I thought it was urine.
No, the masking of it is foot powder, and you put that all over your body in a couple key areas where you sweat a lot.
Okay.
That's where anhydrous ammonia goes as well.
Perfect.
To bring that in a full circle. Man.
Very good.
Guys, connect with us on social media, please, if you are wanting to get more BJJBrick. Joe and Gary and I are on Facebook. We're just on Facebook as people, but find our Facebook page as well, and like it, and watch. We post things that are jiu-jitsu-y and entertaining and motivating as well, and you guys are doing great on there. We're also on YouTube, and BJJBrick has an app. It's really kind of aimed at people who don't listen to podcasts and don't understand how they work. Have that person, because this probably isn't you. Download the app. Just search for BJJBrick in the App Store. Pops right up, and you can download and listen to it through that. Or if you want your own independent app to be represented by BJJBrick, download it and listen to us there versus your normal iTunes app or podcast app that you have. It's all good, my friends.
Yep. Speaking of apps, find us on Maroon as well. It's a new app Byron and I have been playing with. Gary, you on there yet?
No, sir.
Okay.
That's a whole other topic. Basically, I'll explain it.
That could be its whole episode.
Yeah. Gary has a work phone, and sometimes you can't install some apps on work phones, I guess. So, yep, that's basically how that... Is that right, Gary? Is that accurate?
I think that's what's happening, but I really don't know.
Maybe he just doesn't have Wi-Fi on his phone.
That could be it. I've tried like 30 times and thought I had it installed, but I haven't.
Yep.
So I've even tried my work Surface. Problem is I don't have any electronics that aren't related to work.
I gotcha.
That's I guess a problem.
Yeah.
But if you search for BJJBrick, Joe and I should pop up in your search bar in Maroon and add us. And then I always appreciate people. Log your training, that's great and all that sort of thing. But if you post pictures with it, I like to see you guys and see your training partners and see what's happening. It kind of makes a good connection with people out there training that we maybe have not got to meet yet. So I'm trying to post pictures with most of my training sessions as well. You just have to remember to take them.
Yeah, I'm just getting started at that. I have been enjoying, though, perusing other people's training sessions and looking at their notes. Kind of helps me figure out better ways to keep notes. It's kind of interesting to see what different people think is important to write down after training.
Yep. Always learning, Joe. Like that about you, my friend.
Something like that.
Just a quick little, I guess, housekeeping or just about the show. We're looking at making some changes, and so typically,
so you guys are wait. You guys are getting rid of me,
awkward.
And you haven't told me that till we're online here.
Well, how was the last episode you were going to be on, Gary? Was this pretty good?
Well, I noticed you guys, did an episode with me last week, and we come back and it changes. But hey, I understand. I'll start my own podcast.
Okay, we can't have that happening because
it's going to be Gary's BJJBrick podcast.
Yeah. Okay, that would destroy this one basically as soon as it was conceived. by Gary. So we can't have that. So Gary, how about sticking around? But
wait, we need to discuss my compensation.
Okay.
We're going to pay you
Double it.
twice what we're paying you now.
Okay,
Double.
I'm in. Thanks, Joe.
All right.
Possibly looking at tripling
2
it next
times
year.
0 equals 0.
The rewards are priceless, Gary. Okay, but about the podcast here, no major changes. We are for the past quite a while. We've been doing an extra episode every month. We're looking at doing just our normal format of episode every Monday, and really focusing on doing those like the best that we can. We're still looking at having Joe like try to do an interview every month, because the extra episode was typically Joe's interview, and we put that on that. I guess it probably always was Joe's interview, but so still Joe doing an interview, because I really enjoy your interviewing style, and really like the questions you ask are different than me, and like anything, more approaches I think is beneficial. So, but just getting rid of the time constraint of needing to do it at the beginning of the month, because it has been difficult to do our episode that we do like a topic episode, and then the next week starts the interview, and then same week another interview. Like it kind of makes the beginning of every month kind of chaotic, and the ending of every month a little bit chaotic as well. And I think just getting like a more of a rhythm to just every Monday, boom, an episode comes out is going to be a lot more simple, and allow us to focus on other aspects of the show and how to improve that. Trying to do a new intro to the show. I think that's going to happen hopefully soon, but I need the time to do that. Also working on an actual audiobook, and doing a lot of research with that, and a lot of time invested in that project. It's going to be The Art of War for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So got a lot of learning to do on that, and a lot of constructing of different ideas and explaining things. So this will just kind of open things up a little bit, especially towards the beginning of the month and end of the month as well. So still, every Monday, we're going to be here for you, my friends, and that's where we want to see you.
It's all about rhythm.
Ooh.
So something I realized over the last couple of weeks since we had an episode with Gary, and now we're going to back on. Gary's a lot like cowbell. Everybody wants more.
Next
That's
week.
what they used to say when I was in prison.
Everybody gets to ring it. It'll be super awkward to Joe when at the end of next month Gary has his extra episode.
Damn it.
Don't worry, Joe. We're going to pay you double.
All right. And we're making bank.
Yep. We do appreciate everybody who's supporting us on Patreon and through buying audiobooks. But we all have full-time jobs, and we all definitely have to keep those. But stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Train hard, train smart, and get better, guys. We'll see you on the mats.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.